Mr.
The gentleman from Louisiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Chairman Jordan, for doing such an extraordinary job on all of this. For 43 long days, the Democrats held this House and the entire country hostage. Finally, with the lights back on, this body's returning to our regular legislative session. We have a lot of work to do. My colleagues on this side of the chamber are ready and eager to get back to our urgent legislative work that we promised the American people we would do. We've got to continue lowering the cost of health care. We've got to bring down prices for American families, and we've got to finish the regular appropriations process, just to name a few of those priorities. And I wish I could say that our first order of business would be to get to those urgent priorities, but of course we're here spending time on the floor about something else. This is something we could have resolved last week when we brought a unanimous consent to pass this discharge with the full support of the body. But our friends over here who are arguing today stalled that. They objected to it, and they wanted to have this exercise instead. And that's why we say that this is a show vote. That's what this is. They're making a show of it. And it really is a shame. We have some heroic women in the chamber today. I met with many of them a while back. They're in the gallery here. They have come forward. They have shown their faces. They've used their names to share the unspeakable tragedies that many of them were subjected to, some of them when they were very young. And it is a heroic service to the country. They are seeking justice, and the justice has been delayed for too long. The Department of Justice, many years ago, should have brought these charges. It took too long to do it. And now we're in this process of making sure all the American people get the information, but we have to do it in the right way, After 4 years of Democrat control under President Biden, they were not truthful with us about a lot of things. The Democrats insisted the border was secure. We knew it wasn't. They insisted that inflation was transitory. We knew it wouldn't be. They misled the American people about the obvious mental and physical decline of the previous commander-in-chief. And now those same Democrats are demanding transparency. Suddenly, transparency is their new word. Out of nowhere, they've taken a curious concern in the Epstein investigation, all in the name of that, in the name of transparency. But the question has been asked here many times during the debate on the floor, and everybody questioning why it is that Democrats have done this right now have to look at the obvious facts. The Democrats had all the Epstein files in their possession for 4 long years under the Biden presidency. The Biden Department of Justice had these files, and no one on this side who is breathless today about the urgency of this release ever said a word about it. And it was the Democrats who could have urged President Biden's Department of Justice to go beyond prosecuting just Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, but they didn't do it. And so it's a fair question to ask today, why now? Why the sudden urgent interest in Jeffrey Epstein? Look, we know why. It's because the Democrats were never interested in transparency or executing justice or protecting the victims of this unspeakable tragedy before. The simple truth is obvious for everybody to see. This is a political exercise for Democrats, and it pains me to say it. I wish that was not the truth, but it is, and it's undeniable. This is as deceitful and dishonest as their pointless stunt was to shut the government down. Democrats are using the Epstein tragedy, the unspeakable evils that this guy committed with his trafficking ring and all of the abuses that they made these young women go through. They're using that as a political weapon to try to distract from their failures as a party and to try their best to try to tie President Trump somehow into this wretched scandal. The president had nothing to do with it. He's been very clear, and he has nothing to hide, and that's why he's endorsed the vote today. I suspect this vote will be probably unanimous. But here's the important point that everybody needs to understand. We have been advocates of maximum transparency, but we have also insisted that the victims be carefully protected. The Oversight Committee has been doing extraordinary work, and we've got some of the most vigorous advocates on the Republican and Democrat side on the Oversight Committee. They've been working in earnest to deliver transparency for the American people and to do it in a responsible manner. What do we mean by that? The bipartisan effort over there is already producing all the results that the discharge petition seeks and much, much more. Chairman Comer and all of these advocates over there have been releasing thousands of documents, for example, from the Epstein estate. By the way, in my view, that's been the greatest treasure trove of information because it's yielded for us Epstein's own personal flight logs, his financial records, his daily calendars, and so much more. But importantly, none of that was addressed or is addressed in the legislation that's being voted on today. The estate files wouldn't even have been encompassed in that. And so it goes to show that the Oversight Committee is doing it the right way. From the very beginning, we've been insistent that this matter be handled carefully and with the utmost caution and care for the people who have been harmed. They should not be made to suffer any longer. We're talking about real people's lives at stake here, and young victims who don't want to be dragged into this political game that could get hurt further. But the Democrats are rushing the release of thousands of unsubstantiated documents that may be included in this, that are going to be in the public domain with the passage of this bill. And there are serious deficiencies in the legislation that I have noted at length, and Republicans have to work to address those deficiencies in the Senate if and when this legislation is advanced. I stood before the American public today at our press conference, and I explained in detail the dangers of the discharge petition. We have posted at my website, speaker.gov, a summary. The legal counsel, a small army of lawyers, put this together. I used to be a federal court litigator. Many of my colleagues who have spoken today were. We understand the dangers of how this was haphazardly drawn up. And among them, by the way, Mr. Speaker, before I forget, I seek unanimous consent to enter into this document into the record. It's on the website. It's entitled, How the Flaws of H.R. 4405 Could Re-Victimize Epstein's Victims, Create New Victims, and Damage the Judicial System. It is dated today. Thank you. And it summarizes just 5 or 6 of the major concerns. Among them, it fails to fully protect victim privacy. It could create new categories of victims. It potentially jeopardizes grand jury secrecy. It fails to prohibit release of child sexual abuse materials that are not appropriately defined in the legislation. It jeopardizes future federal investigations, and we have national security concerns regarding classified information. We'll put this in the record because we need the legislative record to reflect what is the legislative intent behind this vote. I used to litigate cases. We would litigate federal statutes and whether or not they could survive, and legislative intent is important, and we need to say clearly for the record, as a Speaker of the House, I'm saying to you, this legislation that will pass today is flawed and it must be amended. The question is, why didn't we amend it here before we passed it? Because the authors won't allow it. Because under the rules of the House, under a discharge petition, they have to agree to consent for the legislation to be amended, and they're not doing that. So now we rely upon our partners in the other chamber to get that done, and they need to do that. The victims deserve our utmost respect. In fact, they should be saluted for their courage. And the young women who have not come forward, who are now, some of them are middle-aged women who have not come forward, also deserve our respect, and they deserve to be protected. Republicans support transparency. We want maximum transparency, especially when it comes to disclosing the names of anybody who had anything to do with these evils, anybody who conspired with or aided in any way Jeffrey Epstein. They must be brought to justice. We want the bill to be amended so it doesn't, at the same time, violate victim privacy, create new victims, disclose the names of any whistleblower or informant, cause the release of grand jury materials or child sexual abuse materials, or undermine our national security. And if and when the Senate takes this up, we will work with our colleagues over there to make sure that these things are corrected. I'll just close with this simple thought. We've been at this a while. It's drug on for a while, but it's time for this to come to light. I expect that this will be a unanimous vote, and it will reflect what I think every member in this chamber, and I'll say this now, at least in recent days, every member of the chamber on the Democrat side, they didn't say anything for 4 years, but they're for maximum transparency now, and so is this side. But we want to do it in a respectful and careful manner so that we don't subject innocent people to further harm. And that has been the whole thing. I told all my members today I'll be voting yes on this, and I suspect almost everyone will. We'll send it to the Senate, and we hope it's corrected. Thank you for the time, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
I'm yielding to Mr. Gomez for the sole purpose of making a parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Gomez is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask a point of parliamentary inquiry. Is this an appropriate time to point out that the Republicans named children's savings account in their so-called one big beautiful bill after Donald Trump, someone connected to one of the most notorious pedophiles in this country, or that the Speaker of the House just lied on the floor by stating that there was protection, there isn't protections for the victims in the Epstein bill.
The gentleman is no longer recognized. The gentleman from Maryland, you are recognized.
Thank you. I am prepared to close. I've got no more speakers on my side.
The gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No.
Gentleman from Ohio has 30 seconds.
you could, can I inquire how much time is remaining?
30 seconds. Six minutes, 15 seconds.
Take 30 his.
We reserve.
Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
I'll take the opportunity of the Speaker's presence to respond to some of the things that he said. In the very presence of the victims and the survivors who come to join us today, the Speaker said that now would be a time we should be working on urgent legislative work. Mr. Speaker, justice is urgent legislative work. The truth is urgent legislative work. The Speaker says, why now? Why now? Well, Mr. Speaker, you were the one who refused to swear in Adelita Grajova for 50 days. We would have done it 50 days ago, but she provided the 218th signature on the discharge petition. So why now? It was because of your dilatory tactics, your delay, your postponement of it. Now, the gentleman says that there are not sufficient protections. There are protections in the bill for the victims to make sure that their names will be redacted. And yet we hear even the Speaker of the House of Representatives openly inviting the U.S. Senate to start finger painting on this bill, which we have waited more than 5 months to bring to the floor. The Senate should pass the bill exactly as it's written. The President should sign it exactly as he said he would when he finally changed his mind. And the Epstein file must be released. Moreover, if the President is serious about what he's saying, he's got the power to release the Epstein file right now. Nobody's stopping him. It's within his possession. It's within his control. He can release the whole thing, and he can redact the names of the victims and others who are innocent in this process. Mr. Speaker, Speaker Johnson said that these are unspeakable evils. Well, because of the bravery and the invincible courage of the women who've joined us today, they're no longer unspeakable. They're spoken. They're articulated. The cat is out of the bag, and we know what's been going on for decades. It's been a double standard of justice, going all the way back to Alex Acosta, who later got rewarded with a cabinet appointment in the Trump administration. Alex Acosta had a 60-count federal indictment ready to go against all kinds of people for an interstate sex trafficking conspiracy with solicitation, with child sex abuse, all of it. And he traded that 60-count federal indictment for 1 count in state court. And Jeffrey Epstein ended up getting the sweetest of sweetheart deals ever on the plea bargain front. He was free from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. to do whatever he wanted in continuing to perpetrate his crimes and run his conspiracy. And then he would come and he would watch TV and spend the night in jail. And it was over in about a year after the rape and sexual abuse of hundreds and hundreds of girls. And he kept going and he kept at it. We want the whole truth to come out. This is the United States of America. Even the British monarchy wouldn't put up with this. How about the American democracy? How about we say, no way, we're not going to allow this cover-up to go on for 1 day more. And I'm glad the President changed his mind after pulling out all the stops to try to get one of our Republican colleagues to change their mind, to remove their name from the discharge petition. He gave up. And I want to salute the gentlelady from Colorado from having the courage to stand her ground in the Situation Room in the White House and say, no, she wasn't going to be bullied. No. So I'm glad the President changed his mind. But let's be clear, Mr. President, you've got the power today to release the entire file. That's what you called for. That's what Pam Bondi called for. That's what Kash Patel called for. So we don't need anybody calling for the Senate to slow things down for more weeks and more months. The American people have had it. We'll reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman is reminded to direct your comments to the chair and not your colleagues. Gentleman from Ohio is recognized, and you do have 90 seconds remaining. Correction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Texas.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
The Democrat Party, with help from the dishonest media, used the Epstein files not to seek justice from the victims, for the victims, but to smear President Trump. And it's sickening, quite sickening. The Democrats have used the Epstein files to distract the American people from the wins President Trump and his administration have delivered for the American people for the last 11 months. I'm proud to work with my Republican colleagues on the House Oversight Committee in coordination with the Justice Department. 65,000 pages of documents are related from Epstein released. What have my Democrat colleagues done? They selectively leaked and altered documents to mislead the American people. As President Trump has stated, we have nothing to hide here. I'm voting to release the files so that we can move on from this smear campaign the Democrats have manufactured. God bless
Gentleman's
Donald J.
time has
Trump.
expired. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Ohio reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
All right. How much time do I have to close?
You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank all of America for tuning in to this. I want to thank Representatives Massey and Khanna, Representative Green, all of those who have insisted upon bringing the truth forward and a reckoning with the reality of one of the worst international child sex trafficking rings ever to exist in the United States and the cover-up attendant to it. We've got the opportunity today to do justice for the victims, for the survivors who have come forward to say that the voice of the victims and the survivors must be put at the very center of our deliberations, not shunted off to the side, not submerged, not subordinated, but put at the very center. We must hear from the people who themselves were victimized by this nightmare. Now, our colleagues across the aisle seem to want to make this into some sort of partisan contest. I haven't heard so much talk about the Democrats since the Democratic National Convention. And all that we've done here is to say we want to bring the truth forward along with a bipartisan group. We don't want the Senate monkeying around with this in order to slow things down. We want it passed in the Senate. We want it signed. And before that, if the president is true to his word and he wants to see all of this come to light, he can release it now instead of fighting, kicking, and screaming every step along the way. But I'm glad he's changed his mind, and I hope he maintains the momentum he's got to stick with the vast majority of the American people who want to see that the truth is done here. And while he's at it, the administration could reconsider their terrible policies gutting federal offices and programs designed to combat violence against women. The DOJ terminated hundreds of grants to police departments, defunding the police when it comes to investigating violent sex crimes and to support victims. His DOJ destroyed programs to combat international human trafficking rings. Let's get back on the side of the women. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Speaker Johnson said it right. Why now after 4 years of doing nothing? Because going after President Trump is an obsession with these guys. Best example is John Brennan testified in front of our committee under oath, said he was not involved with the dossier. Only problem is Tulsi Gabbard declassified a report, released that report, and it said exactly the opposite. And she related a story in there where a CIA official went up to Mr. Brennan and said, we shouldn't include this in the report. And John Brennan's response was, yeah, but doesn't it ring true? Forget the facts, forget the truth, go after Trump, put it in. Same dynamic at work here. We're all for protecting innocent victims. We're all for exposing the bad guys who did bad things. But this is an obsession with the left. For 10 years, it's going after President Trump. So vote yes. Make sure the bad guys are held accountable. We all want to do that. Speaker Johnson's right. I think it's going to be unanimous. But understand what they're doing, because they had 4 years and didn't do a darn thing. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 4405? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without
Can I request a
objection,
recorded vote, Mr. Speaker?
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Yeah, I'm requesting a recorded vote.
The gentleman from Maryland has requested a recorded vote. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on the motion to suspend the rules will be followed by 5-minute votes on ordering the previous question on House Resolution 879, adoption of House Resolution 879 if ordered, and adoption of House Resolution 878. This is a 15-minute vote.
know that there was some pressure brought to bear from the Trump administration on some of those Republicans. And we also know that's been a very public row between the president and a woman who was until very recently one of his most loyal and vocal allies, Marjorie Taylor Greene. He has taken to calling her Marjorie Traitor Greene. This morning she said he was calling her a traitor for standing with these women being the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. And she claimed a traitor is an American who serves foreign countries. So a very public falling out between the two. But all of that going on within his own Republican Party, within his own MAGA base, has brought us to the point really now where the House of Representatives has held a vote that many believe should have been held some time ago on the release of the files in full. It looks, as I see the numbers clocking up, like they're still voting despite the official time having expired. The Speaker did suggest earlier that he expected this to be an unanimous vote when the time came. So let's just see when they finish and the gavel falls what the number is. It's sitting at 373 there, so that tells us already that they have gone beyond the 2/3 majority, 435 voting members in the House. So they only needed something like 290 of them to hit that 2/3 majority, and they've done that.
OK, David's live for us there in the United States. We will return to you once we've got that absolute confirmation, but it does seem that that legislation compelling the Department of Justice to release more Jeffrey Epstein documents has won enough support. I just want to briefly, in the briefest form, talking about just a second ago, because
On this vote, the yeas are 427, the nays are 1. 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8, Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on ordering the previous question on House Resolution 879, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Calendar Number 47, House Resolution 879. Resolution providing for consideration of the joint resolution, Senate Joint Resolution 80, providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title 5 United States Code of the rules submitted by the Bureau of Land Management relating to National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska Integrated Activity Plan Record of Decision, providing for consideration of the joint resolution, House Joint Resolution 130, providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title 5 United States Code of the rules submitted by the Bureau of Land Management relating to Buffalo Field Office Record of Decision and approved Resource Management Plan Amendment, providing for consideration of the joint resolution, House Joint Resolution 131, providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title 5 United States Code.
Seems there and claps, I would suggest, largely from Democrats members.
Yes, that's right. And in the public gallery at the House of Representatives this evening are survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. 435 voting members there are. 427 of them have voted to suspend the rules, to rush through this bill, to release the Epstein files. That really is extraordinary. I counted just one Republican vote against. There were a handful of other members who didn't vote at all. But it does now move this to the next stage. The 2/3 majority is pretty overwhelming as it makes its way, this bill, now to the Senate. Democrats are concerned that the Senate, which has a Republican majority of just 3, could seek to tamper with the bill in some way, to add some amendments to it, which could result in it having to go back to the House of Representatives. But it becomes increasingly difficult for them to do that when you're looking at 427 members of the House of Representatives having weighed in behind it. And if the Senate approves it also by a 2/3 majority, this bill then ends up on the desk of the President of the United States. At that point, the only thing standing in the way of the release of the Epstein files in full is Donald Trump's own signature. Asked yesterday if he would be prepared to sign it, he said, "Sure, I would." But things have moved remarkably quickly since the Oversight Committee, that Congressional committee on Capitol Hill, released 23,000 documents from the Epstein estate last Wednesday. That really was the moment when 4 Republicans crossed the floor, so to speak, aligned with Democrats to force this vote this evening. And really it means the effort to bring the Epstein files out into the public has cleared the first of 3 very significant hurdles.